Hello and welcome back to another episode of The Longing, where today we are going to continue and finish off reading the book The Three Tales that we started yesterday, and then begin reading the next book. So, let's get going. The Mouse, the Bird, and the Sausage. Once on a time, a mouse and a bird and a sausage lived and kept house together in perfect peace among themselves, and in great prosperity. It was the bird's business to fly to the forest every day and bring back wood. The mouse had to draw the water, make the fire, and set the table, and the sausage had to do the cooking. Nobody is content in this world. Much will have more. One day the bird met another bird on the way, and told him of his excellent condition in life. But the other bird called him a poor simpleton to do so much work, while the two others led easy lives at home. When the mouse had made up her fire and drawn water, she went to rest in her little room until it was time to lay the cloth. The sausage stayed by the saucepans, looked to it that the victuals were well cooked, and just before dinner-time he stirred the broth or the stew 3 or 4 times well round himself, so as to enrich and season and flavour it. Then the bird used to come home and lay down his load, and they sat down to table, and after a good meal they would go to bed and sleep their fill till the next morning. It really was a most satisfactory life. But the bird came to the resolution next day never again to fetch wood. He had, he said, been their slave long enough. Now they must change about and make a new arrangement. So in spite of all the mouse and the sausage could say, the bird was determined to have his own way. So they drew lots to settle it, and it fell so that the sausage was to fetch wood, the mouse was to cook, and the bird was to draw water. Now, see what happened. The sausage went away after wood, the bird made up the fire, and the mouse put on the pot, and they waited until the sausage should come home, bringing the wood for the next day. But the sausage was absent so long that they thought something must have happened to him, and the bird went part of the way to see if he could see anything of him. Not far off he met with a dog on the road, who, looking upon the sausage as lawful prey, had picked him up and made an end of him. The bird then lodged a complaint against the dog as an open and flagrant robber, but it was all no good, as the dog declared that he had found forged letters upon the sausage, so that he deserved to lose his life. The bird then very sadly took up the wood and carried it home himself, and related to the mouse all he had seen and heard. They were both very troubled, but determined to look on the bright side of things, and still to remain together. And so the bird laid the cloth, and the mouse prepared the food, and finally got into the pot, as the sausage used to do, to stir and flavour the broth. But then she had to part with fur and skin, and lastly with life. And when the bird came to dish up the dinner, there was no cook to be seen. And he turned over the heap of wood, and looked, but the cook never appeared again. By accident the wood caught fire, and the bird hastened to fetch water to put it out. But he let fall the bucket in the well, and himself after it, and as he could not get out again, he was obliged to be drowned. And thus the first of the books is read. We may move on to the Golden Bird, but that is one of the longer ones. I think there is one that is 3 pages, which isn't any of these. Not that one. Might be a good one to finish off today, and then we'll come back for the other book. Well, that's a 1-page one. There isn't a 3-page one. Fair enough. I guess we shall start on the Golden Bird. The Golden Bird. In times gone by there was a king who had at the back of his castle a beautiful pleasure garden, in which stood a tree that bore golden apples. As the apples ripened they were counted, but one morning one was missing. Then the king was angry, and he ordered that watch should be kept about the tree every night. Now the king had 3 sons, and he sent the eldest to spend the whole night in the garden. So he watched till midnight, and then he could keep off sleep no longer. And in the morning another apple was missing. The second son had to watch the following night, but it fared no better. For when 12 o'clock had struck, he went to sleep, and in the morning another apple was missing. Now came the turn of the third son to watch, and he was ready to do so. But the king had less trust in him, and believed he would acquit himself still worse than his brothers, but in the end he consented to let him try. So the young man lay down under the tree to watch, and resolved that sleep should not be master. When it struck 12, something came rushing through the air, and he saw in the moonlight a bird flying towards him, whose feathers glittered like gold. The bird perched upon the tree, and had already pecked off an apple, when the young man let fly an arrow at it. The bird flew away, but the arrow had struck its plumage, and one of its golden feathers fell to the ground. The young man picked it up, and taking it next morning to the king, told him what had happened in the night. The king called his council together, and all declared that such a feather was worth more than the whole kingdom. "Since the feather is so valuable," said the king, "one is not enough for me. I must and will have the whole bird." So the eldest son set off, and relying on his own cleverness, he thought he should soon find the golden bird. When he had gone some distance, he saw a fox sitting at the edge of a wood, and he pointed his gun at him. The fox cried out, "Do not shoot me, and I will give you good counsel. You are on your way to find the golden bird, and this evening you will come to a village, in which 2 taverns stand facing each other. One will be brightly lighted up, and there will be plenty of merriment going on inside. I do not mind about that, but go into the other one, although it will look to you very uninviting." How can a silly beast give one any rational advice? Thought the king's son, and let fly at the fox, but missed him, and he stretched out his tail and ran quick into the wood. Then the young man went on his way, and towards evening he came to the village, and there stood 2 taverns. In one singing and dancing was going on, the other looked quite dull and wretched. "I should be a fool," said he, "to go into that dismal place, while there is anything so good close by." So he went into the merry inn, and there lived in clover, quite forgetting the bird and his father, and all good counsel. As time went on, and the eldest son never came home, the second son set out to seek the golden bird. He met with the fox, just as the eldest did, and received good advice from him without attending to it. And when he came to the 2 taverns, his brother was standing and calling to him at the window of one of them, out of which came sounds of merriment. So he could not resist, but went in and revelled to his heart's content. And then, as time went on, the youngest son wished to go forth, and to try his luck, but his father would not consent. "It would be useless," said he. "He is much less likely to find the bird than his brothers, and if any misfortune were to happen to him, he would not know how to help himself. His wits are none of the best." But at last, as there was no peace to be had, he let him go. By the side of the wood sat the fox, begged him to spare his life, and gave him good counsel. The young man was kind and said, "Be easy, little fox, I will do you no harm." "You shall not repent of it," answered the fox, "and that you may get there all the sooner, get up and sit on my tail." And no sooner had he done so than the fox began to run, and off they went over stock and stone, so that the wind whistled in their hair. When they reached the village, the young man got down, and, following the fox's advice, went into the mean-looking tavern, without hesitating, and there he passed a quiet night. The next morning, when he went out into the field, the fox, who was sitting there already, said, "I will tell you further what you have to do. Go straight on until you come to a castle, before which a great band of soldiers lie. But do not trouble yourself about them, for they will be all asleep and snoring. Pass through them and forward into the castle, and go through all the rooms until you come to one where there is a golden bird hanging in a wooden cage. Near at hand will stand empty a golden cage of state, but you must beware of taking the bird out of his ugly cage and putting him into the fine one. If you do so, you will come to harm. And with that, we will come to the end of the episode, where next time we will continue to read and possibly finish this book. So, for now, I will say thank you very much for joining me today. I hope you all have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon or night, no matter what time of day it is. I hope you all have a wonderful one of it, and as always, we will be back tomorrow for more of The Longing. Goodbye.